Wouldn't that be crazy? Good morning. I am actually. I don't need two things to distract me. So we are in the middle. I should hardly say in the middle. We're still towards the beginning of our Retold series. We've been on this for about 2 months, and we're almost halfway through Genesis. The pace will pick up. Genesis is very dense. There's a lot of characters and themes and families and patterns that Genesis is trying to introduce to us. And the more we go through it, the more we see that Genesis is a repeating cycle. Genesis is a repeating pattern. And that's going to flow through much of the rest of the Old Testament. But again, if this is your first time here, if you've missed a couple weeks here and there, the whole point of this is that, like, most of us have these stories. Most of us know the basic, like, big Bible stories from somewhere. From VeggieTales, from growing up in Sunday school, various, like, pop culture references. Like, Noah's Ark is fairly, like, pop culture. That's one of the ones that hasn't remained super siloed to Christian culture. But like Moses and the Red Sea, like, we get the facts and the lessons of them pretty early on, but the greater context for Scripture and what it means, not just the lesson from it, but what it means for the culture it was written to, what it means for us now, and how it all ties back to Jesus is what we're going for here. And we're starting to get into, like, Abraham's family. Like, this is our, like, big main character. Like, protagonists are finally being, like, pushed into the spotlight. And we've been through Abraham. We went through Isaac's story last week at the park at our family fun morning. If you showed up for that, awesome. Thank you. It was a really fun time. I had a little microphone in front of me recording the audio. She's just coming in and taking chairs. And it glitched out on me. So the audio recording of last week does not exist, unfortunately. You had to be there. But if you were going to miss one, Isaac might be the one to miss, because one of the big reveals about Isaac's story is that it's not as interesting or impressive as the other patriarchs. We said there is no divine promise besides the one he inherited from his father Abraham. There's, like, we're going to get to, like, wrestling with God and, the plagues and the different miracles. And even Abraham has these cool moments. And it's not like Isaac doesn't have anything, but he's always, like, the secondary character and whatever's going on. Abraham going up the mountain to sacrifice Isaac, he was just kind of there. He was along for the ride. Like his wife, Rebecca, Abraham sends a servant to go find Isaac a wife in their homeland. And the servant's a really cool character in that story because he's on the way there and he's stopping for, like, to camp and get a drink and stuff like that. And he just, like, prays. He's just like, God, make me a faithful servant to my master. The right wife for my master's son is going to have this. She's going to come out and offer me water, and she's going to offer to water my camels. And, like, that's exactly how it goes down. And it's a very cool story of, like, Abraham's servant knowing what kind of God he's serving and God just pulling things together. But again, that's not about Isaac. He's not as cool, not as interesting or impressive. He does have similar failure patterns that Abraham has. His family's got a lion problem. Not a lion, like they are lying. They are liars. And we talked about Abraham lying to those kings about his wife being his sister. Not a good look. He gains a lot from it, and he's deceitful and exploitative, and Isaac kind of ends up doing the same thing. They're going into Egypt during a famine, or not Egypt, Gerar, and he tells his wife, hey, say you're my sister so that things will go well for us here. And it's like, dang, we almost got through a whole chapter without someone claiming their wife was their sister. And so again, repeating patterns of failure. But the cool thing about Isaac is the way that he's just really quietly faithful to the plan otherwise. During our reading this morning, he's praying for his wife. Like when his wife can't have children, he doesn't go, I will father a child with one of my wife's servants. He says, God, please give us a child. And God's like, good stuff, Isaac, you got it. And he gets two. Isn't that crazy? We did that. That was cool. And I almost, when it talks about the baby grabbing the brother's heel on the way out, I have this really fun picture when the twins are months old, not quite a year old, but they're rolling around on the floor and Whit has Nix by the ankle. And I'm just like, that's hilarious. Like twin babies really do be grabbing heels. That's not what happened when they were born. Nix came out first, and then Whit had all this room to himself, and he disappeared. And the doctors had to chase him around, and that's why they're 11 minutes apart. That's a lot of time for twins. And so today we're moving on to Isaac's son, Jacob. He is the next main character in this story. He's where things like Abraham is impressive. The patriarchs, the different like central hero characters have these impressive feats despite their flaws. We'll just blanket statement right there. Jacob is particularly impressive. He's also particularly flawed, but he has like cool story beats. Like he's, spoiler for next week, but he works 7 years to earn his wife, which is a weird sentence in 2026, and then he gets the wrong one and works for 7 more years for the wife that he wanted. So like he's persistent and diligent. There's some good attributes that can come out of that. But the big one is that he literally wrestles with God. Like God inhabits flesh, which we see later on down the road, and they're just duking it out all night because all this stuff has happened in Jacob's life. And he's like, nah, no more. You bless me. Like crazy stuff. Very impressive from Jacob. But the way that story starts is kind of tense. We read in our scripture this morning that while Rebecca is pregnant, these kids are going at it. Like there is a struggle within her womb between these two children. And God is like, okay, 2 nations are wrestling in your womb right now. One is going to be stronger, but the older will serve the younger. And it's just like, just a little preview. Here's what's going to go down. So these kids are going to be rivals, but before they're even born, before they even grow up enough to understand that they're in competition with each other, there's already tension. There's rivalry between the two of them before they're even born. And it's divine because now it's part of the promise. Like, very complicated. But as the theme, we've talked about this a lot the last few weeks, as the theme of the Old Testament starts to unfold a little more, the common denominator kind of becomes God's promise moves forward through deeply flawed people. And if I want to get a little more like pointed or inflammatory about it, I would say human beings keep trying to seize what God has already promised to give. And so that's going to take us right into movement 1 this morning. And we're calling this a family divided. And so I haven't done this in a while. I'm going to do it today. But what the characters are named tells us a lot about the deeper details of the story. Like I said, when Esau came out, he was red and hairy, and so they called him Esau. It's like, okay, why does him being red and hairy mean he was called Esau? Jacob, they call him Jacob because he comes out grabbing the heel. What does that mean? And so for Jacob, that comes from the Hebrew akev, which means heel, or he takes by the heel, or he cheats, supplanter, or he follows after or displaces another. The older will serve the younger. That was not tradition. Firstborn sons, we're going to get into the birthright here later. Firstborn sons was the line of the family. And so this is like foreshadowing. He is going to cheat and supplant and displace his brother. Then we move on to Esau, which is the Hebrew asa, which means rough, made, done, the doer, or fully formed. So Esau comes out looking like a whole person already, is like the joke behind that. He also earns the name Edom, which means red, because he's a ruddy man. That's either his complexion or his hair. It talks about him being very hairy. But it also foreshadows something else red that has to do with Esau later down the road. We are going to talk about it, so I won't spoil too much of it. But Esau comes out tough and rugged, and Jacob comes out grasping at his brother. That's a big picture. The rivalry is built into the framework of the narrative just through their names. And then Scripture also tells us how different Jacob and Esau are. And that gives us hints about how different their parents are. Because Esau is the hunter, he's the outdoorsman, while Jacob is like, he's quieter and he's more settled. He's almost domestic, which again was not a super traditional like gender norm back in the day. The men were out doing the hunter gathering and the outdoorsy. Like Esau was the man's man, and Jacob was the mama's boy. We know that because we get that really devastating line: Isaac loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. And so the parents are choosing favorites, which is, as someone with multiple children, is a crazy thing to me. Like if you have one kid, it's easy to have a favorite. KV. But we had this earlier with Abraham and Sarah. They have Ishmael through Hagar. But then they get Isaac, and Isaac is the favorite child. Isaac is the preferred son, and that at least makes a little more sense because Isaac is the promised son. Isaac is the one that the redemption plan is going to work through. So that at least makes a little bit more sense that they would prefer Isaac. And we've already been over like the way they treated Hagar and Ishmael was really bad, but God saw them and God made a promise for them too. God doesn't forget the victims of these stories. But Jacob and Esau are not like that. It's not that, oh, one is very clearly the promised son and one is the other kid. They're twins, like full brothers born of the same mother. But the only reason it's complicated is because Rebekah gets this word from God that two nations are at war within her and one will be stronger, but the older shall serve the younger. That makes things real complicated because even though Esau is technically the firstborn, I've been trying to explain that to my twins, like Nick's is technically the oldest, if only by 11 minutes, but we have a tradition set up here that is being complicated by the plan. And so we've got the family starting to split into teams, where we've got Isaac and Esau on one end, and then we have Rebekah and Jacob on the other end. We've got the dad and his firstborn manly man son, and then we've got mom and the secondborn mama's boy kind of child. Really interesting dynamic. And like, a lot of us have like family drama and family dysfunction. I talked a little bit about that last week. And rarely does that ever come from one really dramatic moment. There's a lot of things that contribute to family dysfunction. There's favoritism, there's resentment, there's comparison and competition between these two sons. The struggle between God's chosen family here is happening before anybody's even lied to each other. Like I said, there is a lying problem in this family, but before that even has a chance to surface, the tension is already there. And so that leads us to movement 2. I called this the family business of deception, because that's kind of what it's turning into at this point. I talked about one of the themes of Genesis is that these are patterns that are repeating. Human beings reached for control, and they got it, but it has not worked out. And even when God is trying to get involved, and he's got a promised redemption plan that he's trying to work out with people, and we keep trying to help. We go back to Abraham. He lied about his wife being his sister twice to 2 different kings. They're going through famine. They're living in a foreign, hostile land. He's destitute and he's fearing for his life. And so he manipulates the truth for his safety and personal gain. And then Isaac repeats that pattern. And so the lying is happening. They've set up this belief that when you're afraid, you deceive, you protect yourself, and you take control. Deception is in the bloodstream now, and it came from the serpent. The serpent deceived Eve, and so deception is just kind of the trickle down from seizing control for ourselves. So we get to Rebekah and Jacob. Like the rest of the patterns that we've talked about, like this isn't one isolated event. It's just a repetitive family pattern that they've already been setting up by creating all this tension and division within the family. How many of us know that like when there is so much tension and division and distrust, it's hard to reach a solution without diluting the truth somewhere. We got to take people's feelings into account, and sometimes that's good. Sometimes there's like eggshell situations. Like this is not a healthy family dynamic. This is not a perfect family that God has chosen to work the plan out through. This is a very unhealthy family. Can we agree? They're the heroes of our Bible, and the point of that isn't that, oh, they're so perfect and we should aspire to be like them. They are literally just like us. So we get to chapter 27 of Genesis, and Rebekah hears that Isaac is about to bless